The small-town museum had always been quiet at night. The faint hum of the HVAC system and creaking floorboards. The only company for the night guard Marcus. Tonight, however, the museum buzzed with a strange energy as the antique shipment arrived of ornate wooden dolls packed in crates, their painted eyes staring even from inside the cardboard boxers. Marcus pried open the first crate. The smell hit him, first musty, old, and something metallic, faintly coppery like blood. Inside were the dolls, each one crafted with eerie perfection. Porcelain skin, ruby lips curled into eternal smiles, glassy eyes that seemed almost alive. He felt a shiver, ignoring it as he set the dolls on display for the upcoming exhibit. But as he arranged them, he noticed something impossible. One doll had shifted, its head now tilted slightly, chin resting unnaturally toward him. Marcus rubbed his eyes. A faint giggle echoed through the warehouse. Marcus froze. The doll's painted mouth hadn't moved, but the sound had come from it. Another crate squeaked open. More giggles. Marcus stumbled back, heart racing. Shadows danced across the walls as he backed toward the exit. And then he saw the first blood. Doll's tiny fingers were stained dark red, crimson dripping down the polished wood onto the crate. Marcus gagged, stepping closer only to see the source. The blood wasn't paint. It glistened, wet and warm, like fresh flesh. Another doll's eyes rolled back, revealing dark veins beneath. Something slammed into the crates, toppling them. Dolls scattered across the floor, moving with jerky, unnatural motions. They crawled, twisted, and shuffled as if guided by unseen strings. The giggles grew louder, echoing, warped into hundreds of overlapping voices. Marcus ran, but the dolls followed. One leapt at his leg, its tiny claws raking the skin. Pain exploded through his calf as blood spurted from a deep scratch. He kicked violently, sending the doll skittering across the floor, its porcelain head bouncing off the tiles. Another doll clamped onto his arm with unnatural strength, nails tearing through his sleeve and skin alike. He fell to the floor, scrabbling for a weapon. A display sword leaned nearby. Marcus swung it, slicing through one doll's chest. Wood and porcelain shattered, and dark blood sprayed everywhere, mixing with the coppery stench that filled the room. Yet the doll didn't stop it, reassembled, fragments moving together with terrifying precision, advancing on him again. The night became a blood-soaked nightmare. Dolls crawled up tables, swung from rafters, and clawed at walls as if the museum into their personal hunting ground. Marcus's screams echoed, drowned out by the growing cacophony of laughter and scraping nails. Every swing of his sword only made the dolls more aggressive, the shattering porcelain feeding the dark energy that animated them. Finally, Marcus stumbled into the main exhibit hall, the floor slick with crimson. He looked around. Dozens of dolls now faced him, eyes glowing faintly red, mouths twisted in horrifying smiles. A large doll at the center of the room, carved with intricate detail unlike the others, stepped forward. Its lips parted, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. "Play with us," it whispered in a voice that was many voices layered together, echoing in Marcus's skull. Before he could react, the dolls surged. Marcus screamed as they swarmed, their tiny claws tearing at his clothes, biting, pulling at flesh. the wooden splinters embedded in his skin as blood poured from deep cuts. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the doll's unholy laughter, ringing louder than the alarm bells of the town. Marcus never made it home. By the time morning arrived, the museum's front doors were eerily silent, the street empty, but inside, the building had transformed into a chamber of nightmares. Blood streaked the floors, walls, and display cases, glistening in the dim morning light. The metallic scent of iron filled every corner, mingling with the acrid stench of burning wood. Where a display had caught fire from the struggle, no one knew what had happened until the night guard shift changed. Clara, a young intern, entered the museum carrying a flashlight and her clipboard, expecting an uneventful inspection. She froze the moment she stepped into the main hall. The dolls were everywhere, hundreds of them scattered across the floor, shelves, and display tables. Their painted eyes glimmered red in the flashlight beam. One tiny porcelain hand twitched on the carpet, gripping a splintered piece of Marcus's uniform. Then she heard it, the giggle. Soft at first, like a child laughing, but quickly it multiplied. Hundreds of overlapping voices echoing in every direction. Clara's stomach churned as she noticed something horrifying. The dolls were moving, crawling, climbing. They advanced on her, their claws scraping tiles, leaving streaks of blood behind. One doll leaped onto her leg. She screamed as its jagged nails tore through her jeans and into her flesh. She kicked violently, sending it flying into a display case, shattering porcelain and sending shards flying. Red liquid sprayed across her arms. Clara stumbled backward, only to see the floor littered with remnants of Marcus. His body was in pieces and legs severed, torso mangled, and a twisted expression of terror frozen on his face. One of the larger dolls had sunk its sharp teeth into his neck, ripping chunks of flesh free as it played with him. She ran for the stairs, but the dolls pursued. Smaller ones scuttled under tables, gnawing at her shoes, scratching her ankles, drawing blood with each bite. A medium-sized doll jumped from a shelf, sinking jagged teeth into her forearm. Pain exploded as it tore through muscle and skin. Crimson poured down her arm, soaking her blouse. Clara screamed, hacking and swinging a nearby fire extinguisher at the dolls. Porcelain shattered, blood sprayed, but still they advanced. She ran into the storage room, banging the door shut, heart hammering. Inside, crates of dolls spilled open, dozens more crawling toward her. Some had eyes gouged out, some missing limbs, yet they moved as if powered by some unholy force. The largest doll, the one with jagged teeth and glowing red eyes from part 1, stepped forward. It was taller than a human, its wooden body twisted, and warped veins darkened with black eye. It opened its mouth unnaturally wide, hundreds of needle-like teeth glinting as it tilted its head toward her. Clara's flashlight fell, flickering. The sound of scraping wood and snapping porcelain filled the storage room. She felt a clawed hand brush against her back. She spun around and screamed as a doll's tiny teeth sank into her shoulder, shredding muscle and skin. She could feel her blood warm and sticky on her fingers as she ripped it off, tossing it across the room where it exploded into shards, spraying the walls. The remaining dolls began climbing the walls, hanging from the ceiling like spiders, raining tiny claws. and teeth upon her. Blood from Marcus's remains mixed with her own pooling on the floor. Her mind screamed to escape, but every door led only to more dolls. More blood, more terror. Then, as she backed into a corner, she heard each guttural laugh. The large doll stepped into the center of the room, its teeth chattering, saliva dripping thick and black onto the tiles, its many faces twisted in sadistic glee. It pointed at Clara with a clawed hand, and hundreds of tiny dolls followed its lead, advancing like a tide of living horror. Clara screamed as she realized the truth. The dolls were not just toys, they were hungry, and the museum had become their hunting ground. Every scream, every shred of flesh only fueled them. And tonight, they had claimed Marcus. Tomorrow, they would claim her. The final sight before she ran one small doll climbing up the back of the large doll's leg. A tiny piece of Marcus's face still clinging to its jaws, grinning silently as if mocking her. By midnight, the small town had become a slaughterhouse. Screams echoed from the streets as the dolls spread like a plague, hunting anyone foolish enough to be alone. Blood slicked the sidewalks, a dark, glistening river weaving between overturned cars and shattered shop windows. The air reeked of iron and decay, the faint giggles of the dolls blending with the terrified cries of their victims. Clara stumbled out of the museum, her blouse torn, arm mangled, crimson streaming from deep claw wounds. Her vision blurred as she ran down the empty street, only to see more dolls climbing out of alleys, sewers, and shadowed doorways. Their tiny claws scraped concrete, leaving bloody streaks as they advanced, eyes glowing red. The first victim appeared. At the corner, a man dragged across the pavement by 3 dolls, each biting into his flesh. Limbs twisted at unnatural angles as bones snapped with wet pops. One doll tore into his throat, blood gushing like a fountain. His screams ended in a gurgling cough as he collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. Clara turned and ran, but a doll leapt onto her back, sinking jagged teeth into her shoulder. She swung violently, ripping the tiny porcelain creature apart, pieces scattering like shards, dark ichor spraying across her face. Behind her, dozens more advanced. Their movements were inhuman, jerky, yet fluid, almost like puppets controlled by a sadistic hand inside a nearby convenience store. The scene was worse. Dolls swarmed the cashier, ripping open the till and shoving splintered wooden fingers into the clerk's mouth. She screamed as her jaw was torn sideways, blood gushing in a fountain, her entrails beginning to spill across the floor. The dolls climbed over the body, chewing and gnawing as though savoring every moment. Clara ducked into a back alley, only to see a child being dragged toward a dumpster. 2 dolls perched on the edge, biting into the kid's arms, tearing chunks of flesh as his tiny hands clawed at the concrete. Blood soaked the alley, dripping into the storm drains, the dolls' laughter echoing like a chorus of nightmares. The largest doll, the jagged-toothed monstrosity from the museum, emerged into the open street. Its towering body cast a monstrous shadow across the town square, arms elongated, claws dripping black eye. Tiny dolls clung to it, tearing apart anyone who dared approach. The creature's mouth opened impossibly wide, rows of needle-like teeth glinting in the moonlight as it roared a sound that was both mechanical and human. Layered with hundreds of tortured voices, Clara scrambled over overturned tables and broken street signs, screaming, her own blood mixing with the gore around her. The dolls were relentless, ripping through bodies with feral precision. One leapt at her legs, slicing through muscle, leaving her to collapse in the dark puddle of blood. She could feel the warmth of human remains seeping into her hair and clothing. As she tried to crawl away from above, the dolls began dropping from rooftops, their tiny bodies crashing onto the streets, splintering and reforming almost instantly, pulling any bystanders into the chaos. The town's power flickered, and the night was filled with screams, wet, tearing sounds, and that constant, maniacal giggle. Clara finally reached the edge of the river that ran through the town. Bodies floated in the dark water, missing limbs, faces slashed, eyes staring blankly. Dolls perched on the banks, dragging victims back into the depths, their tiny claws raking flesh, teeth gnawing on bone. The river became a crimson current, carrying screams downstream. She backed into a dead end, chest heaving, vision swimming with blood and fear. The largest doll stepped toward her, dozens of tiny dolls surrounding it like a pack of predators. Its jagged teeth dripped black ichor, and Clara felt an icy dread claw at her spine. She realized with bone-chilling clarity, the dolls weren't just killing, they were feeding. Every scream, every shred of human flesh made them stronger. The dolls closed in. Clara raised her arms to defend herself, but a clawed hand sliced across her side, opening a long gash from which blood spurted like a broken fountain. Another doll leaped onto her shoulder, sinking teeth into her neck. Pain erupted as it tore through muscle and skin. She screamed, thrashing wildly, but it was futile. The dolls were infinite, relentless, bloodthirsty. As the night deepened, the town was lost. Streets glistened red. Buildings were smeared with gore, and the haunting giggle of the dolls echoed into the darkness. Clara's screams blended with those of the other victims, all consumed by the dolls' horrifying hunger. The town had become a playground of carnage, and the dolls were the undisputed predators, their laughter promising that no one would survive the night. The town was unrecognizable. Streets were slick with blood, car windows shattered, and buildings torn as if some colossal beast had torn through them. The air reeked of iron and burnt wood, mingled with the shrill, maniacal giggles of hundreds of dolls echoing off every wall. The few remaining survivors ran screaming, tripping over bodies torn apart by the dolls' relentless claws and teeth. Clara stumbled into the town square, her arm shredded, blood pooling in her shoes, her blouse hanging in tatters. She could hear the whispers of the dolls in her mind now, hundreds of tiny voices urging her to surrender. One doll, perched atop a lamppost, tilted its head, teeth gnashing. A thin line of saliva dripped down onto the street, sizzling as it hit the pavement stained with viscera. The largest, dolda jagged-toothed abomination from the museum stepped into the square, towering over everything. Its wooden body was warped and blackened, streaks of dried and fresh blood covering its limbs. Dozens of tiny dolls clung to it, biting and clawing at any remaining humans. The creature opened its grotesque mouth, revealing hundreds of needle-like teeth, and emitted a guttural roar layered with screams of the victims it had consumed. Clara's vision blurred as she saw her friend, Jonah, dragged across the street. His torso had been ripped open, intestines spilling, and the smaller dolls gnawed hungrily at his limbs. The large doll raised a clawed hand and hurled Jonah toward Clara. She ducked, but the impact sent her sprawling into a puddle of blood, shards of porcelain embedded in her arms. The dolls attacked with coordinated precision. Tiny claws tore through exposed flesh, teeth sliced into muscles, and wooden splinters drove deep into bone. Clara's screams merged with those of the dying townsfolk as the dolls climbed, bit and shredded everything in their path. A woman's head rolled across the square, hair matted with blood, eyes wide in terror. The dolls dragged her torso into a shop doorway, gnawing as her cries faded into gurgling gasps. Clara ran toward the abandoned church at the edge of town, thinking she could hide. Inside, the dolls followed, scaling walls, hanging from rafters, and falling from the ceiling. Blood slicked the floor as Clara slipped and fell onto a shattered pew, shards of wood cutting into her back. She could feel her own warm blood mixing with the gore around her. The largest doll approached her. It bent down, teeth gnashing, saliva dripping onto her face. Clara, trembling, grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor and swung it with all her strength. The pipe cracked the doll's jaw, spraying black ichor and blood across the altar, but it barely flinched. Its wooden body warped, splinters reforming, eyes glowing red as it advanced. From the shadows, dozens of smaller dolls swarmed, biting into her arms, legs, and torso. Each tear of flesh sent her screams echoing through the church. She clawed desperately at them, tearing porcelain apart, but the dolls kept coming. Every strike of the pipe, every punch was met with more dolls, more teeth, more claws. Finally, Clara realized the truth. The dolls weren't just alive, they were possessed. Each human victim's soul powered them, twisted into laughter and bloodlust. The more blood they consumed, the stronger they became. The last thing Clara saw before the darkness took her was the largest doll opening its mouth impossibly wide. Inside, dozens of faces twisted, screaming, eyes pleading peered from the darkness. Its teeth sank into her chest, ripping out her heart, and she felt herself pulled into the endless hunger of the dolls. Outside, the town square lay in ruin. Streets were rivers of blood, bodies torn and scattered. The dolls giggled, now fully animated, crawling over walls and vehicles, whispering promises of the next victims. The blood-soaked city had become a playground for the laughing dolls. Their feast had just begun.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.